Thanks so much for joining us today. When we have either a diagnosis ourselves or a diagnosis from someone we love of cancer, it's a big, scary word, and it can be an overwhelming diagnosis. And that's why I'm so delighted to be talking with my dear friend and colleague, Kirstin Nussgruber, today, because there are things that you can do to help support yourself or your loved one. And there are some things that you really need to know that make this not necessarily as overwhelming as it may feel when you first get the diagnosis. So the very first thing I'd like to do is tell you just a little bit about Kirstin. She is a cancer nutrition expert. She's also an author, a speaker. She's passionate about helping people get out of cancer overwhelm by teaching them how to reclaim their lives. Kirstin is a 2-time cancer survivor herself, so she has learned firsthand the importance of an integrative approach to one's health in order to facilitate true healing. She offers personalized mentoring packages to private clients, and she also works in collaboration with functional medicine practitioners. Her amazing book is called Confessions of a Cancer Conqueror, My 5-Step Process to Transform Your Relationship with Cancer. She's also the creator of First Steps to Take Control of Your Cancer Care, which is an online self-help program. Kirstin, thank you so much for being here. It's really lovely to talk with you.
Thank you, Mira. Thank you for having me here. It's always great to interact with you in any way, shape, or form. So I'm honored to be here today.
Thank you. I love that you talk about the integrative approach to cancer. I think for a lot of people, obviously, when they get a diagnosis, they're typically starting in a conventional medicine setting. And so a whole bunch of thoughts and processes come up. Can you talk about how we can integratively approach that and move forward?
Sure, absolutely. I'm glad you start with framing it that way, because very often when people are initially diagnosed, I get a lot of queries sometimes saying, I'm hesitant to go the conventional route. I want to go the alternative route. And I want to clarify something here. What does that mean? So the word alternative kind of has a bit of a suspicious negative connotation also in the clinical world. One thing we need to understand really clearly is that we do need to have some form of clinical care when we are diagnosed with cancer. Cancer is way too sneaky to really get, I think, reduced down to a simplistic approach. So dealing with cancer is multi-layered, is something that we need to do from then onwards, right? So even beyond conventional cancer care, we need to be on our own as vigilant as possible in an integrative way, in a functional medicine way, in a complementary way. The word alternative often implies I'm rejecting conventional care and I'm only going to do what? And that what is very open, very vague. Very often it's, can I just change my nutrition? And I'll just want to really increase my exercise, change my nutrition, take a couple of supplements, and observe it a little bit. I do get queries like that. And I don't work with people like that because that is very dangerous to do. You need to be under clinical supervision. Now, do we need to be vigilant in terms of the conventional care and what its strengths, but also limitations are? Absolutely. And that's why this integrative complementary approach really uses conventional care as one area that we focus on. And we realize it's one area we focus on. There are other areas we can focus on as well. And that is, if you think about it, conventional care will focus on the disease that you now have and will use whatever they have available in their toolbox to focus on that. And the one thing I want to say about that is make sure you have an open-minded medical oncologist on your team. And we employ them. Do it that way. When in a house we have a plumbing issue or electric issue and we get a couple of quotes in from a plumber or electrician, we compare. and we figure out what is a better fit for us. We hardly tend to do that in medical care, especially when we're diagnosed with cancer and we're afraid. But if there is anything off about a particular person, this is a person you need to develop a relationship with, and they need to be at least open to how you approach things. That's one important part to the conventional care. But what is complementary care? So complementary is, what else can we do? So conventional care focuses on the disease part. What about that part of me that is still very healthy? There's a lot about me that is still healthy that I now need to support, and it's never too late to stop, or to start rather, hardcore supporting that now. And of course, that's where nutrition comes in, which is a tool that we have at our disposal to use that to really strengthen the body, to support the body, to make sure we nourish and nurture the body. There are a lot of non-nourishing, non-nurturing, actually inflammation-causing foods out there that we have become accustomed to having access to, eating for the sake of convenience. And now is really the time to go, okay, whatever I'm putting in my mouth, whether it's at meal times, whether it's snacks, whether it's via drinks, is it nurturing? Is it life enhancing? Or could it potentially contribute to inflammation? And that's one area that we really want to focus on. We do not want to add any inflammation causing substances to the body, because cancer itself is inflammation, but also cancer uses inflammation to manipulate the body for its own advantage. So it can grow and spread, and often it uses pathways where it can hide from detection from the immune system. So there's a lot going on there, and we do not want to add fuel to the fire by then relying on quick convenience foods that are actually none other than just really empty calories, and even worse, they actually contribute to inflammation. So this is a really good time then to take stock and to figure out, how do I need to nurture myself? At the same time, too, we also would like to assess, what is my inner terrain, right? When we get a diagnosis like cancer, it happens to the body. Now, that body has an inner terrain. There could be existing imbalances already from a nutrition point of view. We could have micronutrient imbalances that are already there. We could have certain gut issues directly related to nutrition. If we can't digest the food properly, if we have gut issues, that these gut issues can range from digestive insufficiency, the inability to properly digest certain foods. We might have already some form of intestinal permeability going on, or leaky gut, that can cause inflammation. That can also disrupt proper assimilation of food, that can lead to food sensitivities. We might have noticed that about ourselves. I react to certain foods. So this is also a good time where we look at that. We look at what's going on inside of me before we now add an extra burden of possible cancer treatments or surgery, and use this nutrition toolbox to also address those imbalances in a very gentle and supporting way. And depending on where you are in your cancer journey, if you are obviously going to be receiving cancer treatments, we look at you very differently than if you are not. So if you are, say, just surgery is a form of cancer treatment, but if you're only receiving surgery and it's not followed up by chemotherapy or radiation therapy or immunotherapy, you fall into a different category than if you are, and we need to take that into consideration. And there's a lot we can do with the concentrated nutrition, which this is now the area, the supplement area, right? So we, on the one hand, we have the whole foods area. On the other hand, we have the concentrated nutrition, supplements or nutraceuticals. And I like to make a distinction there too, because supplements are there to supplement, and certain nutrients we can measure in the blood. What's my vitamin D level? What's my magnesium? What's my B12? Those are easy to identify if we have any imbalances there, and then we can focus on that with certain concentrated supplements, which we can do whether we're receiving any form of cancer treatment or not. It generally does not interfere with treatments if we're talking about vitamins and minerals, okay, and certain amino acids. We've got to already be careful there. When it comes to antioxidants in the form of supplements, we also need to be careful there. It really depends what type of treatments we're going. But that's where the personalized approach comes in, right?
Sure. And I love two things that you said that have really stood out for me is the fact that we want to remember and focus on the parts of you that are still healthy. I think all too often when people get some kind of a diagnosis, and it doesn't have to be cancer, even anything, our mindset tends to shift to that is who I am. And you are more than your diagnosis. And there are other parts of you that are healthy and doing well, and we want to boost those. So I love that. I also love that you said it's never too late.
No, it's not. It's not. And people notice a difference almost immediately. Is probably too romantic a view, but let's say in about 3 to 4 weeks generally would be the earliest that people do notice a difference when they eat differently. And it's a mindset thing too. If you put your mind to one thing, I'm not just going to do what is convenient, I'm going to do what it takes. That's my contribution to my health journey, my battle with cancer. You as a patient will use your own terminology on what you are about to embark on. And we generally do go through this phase of, this is my enemy, I have to fight it for a while. My guidance here is generally, we need to move beyond that. We can't stay stuck in that. We might have that as an initial gut reaction, but then we actually need to transcend that. We need to transform our relationship with cancer. And that's what the title of my book is, that too. It takes time. It doesn't happen right away. You're not going to be diagnosed with cancer and the next day you go, oh, I'm going to transform my relationship with cancer. It doesn't happen that way. You're going to definitely go through a period of where you want to punch walls, and you might even go through a period of why me? And that's all normal. Those feelings of anger and guilt and frustration, they are very normal and they shouldn't be silenced, but we don't need to be stuck in that. We then need to move on. So in other words, allow those emotions to come out in whichever shape or form, and then move on.
Sure, absolutely. And I was chuckling for a minute because I was thinking about how for so many of us, when we hear something, it's, I'm just going to let it go and it's all going to be good. And really what we forget is, as part of the journey, because I'm someone who's, thank goodness, I have not had to deal with cancer, but I've been diagnosed with 5 different autoimmune disorders. And every time a new one kept rolling in, and it's like, you have to process it. You have to let it go. Because if you just try to hold it on, like, oh, I'm fine, everything's good, like it's going to be great, that doesn't do anything in helping you get into that mental space to then be able to move through and address the other things that are going on. And I know a lot of the work that you do is more than just food. And so that's, I think, a really important message for people to get, is that it's okay, like you said, to be mad, to be angry, to be overwhelmed. And once we get through that, then we can get down to the work of really focusing on those.
Reclaiming the life, right? Which is what we have. I have a lot of stage 4 cancer patients. So sometimes they come at a very late stage to the game. And when you are at that stage, it's a very different area. You are then dealing with cancer as a chronic disease. Generally, there's no cure, but you can manage it. So obviously, it depends on the exact diagnosis and everything around it in terms of how long can you manage that pretty well. I have a couple of stage 4s that have been around for a much longer time than they were originally told they would be. Especially to really highlight that point, it is never too late. It isn't. You can, again, if you really are on board, if you're really prepared to do what it takes, there is a lot of leeway. There is a lot of area of flexibility that you can focus on and really give your body the strength that it needs. Yeah.
And let's back up just a little bit to food, because of course, food, how we nourish our body, is so important.
Yeah.
And I would love to talk for just a moment about what are some of the top yeses and the top nos that people would do well to keep in mind.
Let's take the focus on inflammation-causing foods. Okay, so I'm not one to follow the latest food trends. So you might hear a lot about, oh, when you get cancer, you should follow the ketogenic diet, or you should become vegan. Those are all very specific food directions, and they might work for some, but they might not work for others. So some people can thrive under those conditions and others don't, especially with the ketogenic diet. That is a very therapeutic diet if you do it the right way, the full-blown way, not just a low-carb way, but keto means you are forcing the body into different energy-producing mode, staying in ketosis, etc. That's the real ketogenic way.
Real keto, balanced keto, not this whole dirty keto that I've seen.
And that's beware is basically I caution people that that's very hard on the body too. And we have to do that under some form of clinical supervision. We need to understand what physiological changes we're creating in the body. And that needs to be monitored and observed over time, not just at the beginning, because it could actually backfire on you. So in terms of that, we want to be a bit careful. The important focus, I think, here is let's go back to whole foods, meaning real foods, okay? Foods that nourish you, that don't cause inflammation, okay, just from the way they are processed. So you want to stay away from processed foods as much as possible. Main meals, you want to be able to say, I use whole foods ingredients, okay? Do we have certain processed foods, sometimes some crackers or this? Yes, of course we do. We're not having any processed foods, but we want our main meals to be from home cooked foods, and there are various options here too, okay? Then the important part is to, how do we now create a certain balance in the body? And so the trend towards ketogenic is, okay, let's reduce the carbohydrate intake. And why is that important? It's important because it refers to the blood sugar balancing, the interaction between glucose and insulin. That mechanism needs to be normalized. Believe it or not, even if you're on a ketogenic diet, you still have a glucose insulin mechanism that doesn't go away. You're not going to reduce all glucose from your body. There will still be glucose in your body, even on a ketogenic diet. So let's take that myth away. We want balance. We want that scenario to be balanced. And in our modern way of living, with our modern way of eating, very often we are not balanced here. And we do not need to be overweight or even obese to have a blood sugar imbalance. We can be extremely thin. We could actually be fit, physically fit, and we can have a blood sugar imbalance. Okay, so that area we want to focus on. And that's where the carbohydrate and sugar intake comes in. We want to normalize that and get people used to their taste buds as well, and not relying on the starch part of a meal, changing the framing around how do you build your meal, what macronutrients do I focus on, how do I make my plate in such a way that I'm actually feeling full and satiated afterwards and not hungry again in half an hour because I didn't eat any carbohydrates and I didn't balance the macronutrient ratios appropriately.
And I love that you mentioned that, because so many people, I know a lot of the clients that I work with, when they're coming to me with gut health issues, they've decided that all carbs are bad. And we have to point out that we need carbs. We just need the right carbs. We need the ones that are going to be supportive. We're not talking things like chips and crackers and pasta and things like that.
The refined carbs. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. No, absolutely. The complex carbohydrates. And even there, as how do we get that balance, that ratio right? That's what I teach my clients. And they're quite amazed when they realize sometimes, and sometimes we just, it depends what they come to me with, but sometimes we just start by, all right, this is how you're eating right now. So for the next month, you're going to use an app and you're going to food track what you eat. And that data is going to tell you your macronutrient ratios. How many carbs are you eating a day, net carbs, how many fats, how many proteins? And very often that's an eye-opener, because people are not in full understanding even what is a carbohydrate, what is a fat, what is a protein, and then about quantities. No, I'm eating fine, but realizing they're actually eating not enough of a certain, or one of the macronutrients, right? So just that educational process can reframe how you put together a meal or a snack. Then, of course, we move on to what do we replace that with? If I need to stop eating that, what do I replace it with? Then we go into that. And then we go into how do I make that taste good? Because I don't like the taste of that because I'm not used to it. And I don't actually know how to prepare it. Okay. Quite frankly, I don't know how to make it taste good. And also, I don't want to spend too much time in the kitchen, etc. So then we address those kinds of more hands-on issues that people have, or we go virtual shopping through certain products. Very often my clients then become really motivated to go out and label read, which I know is one of your strongholds, right?
That is
teaching your clients how to adequately read a nutrition facts label and then making informed decisions. And that step alone is incredibly empowering. And then they often come back to sessions. All right, I have all these food items here. What do you think of? And they show them, or they tell me the name, and I quickly Google it while I'm having a session with them. And then again, I'm educating them through the process of this is what you look for. This is an okay choice. This is not too bad. No, I would rather not do that because although you're not getting a lot of carbs in that, but look at the other ingredients in here. That education process is empowering. So they can go out there and make informed decisions.
And I love, what I'm hearing, how you're making it not only bio-individual, but addressing their food cultures, because not everybody wants to eat the same foods or enjoys the same foods. And so to really find the solutions that are going to nourish while at the same time creating a scenario where you're going to be enjoying what you're doing. Let's face it, it doesn't matter how healthy it is if you don't like it. It's just going to create this really unhappy resonance when you're eating. And our food is supposed to be nourishing and enjoying on so many levels. Yeah, absolutely.
I've had a couple of clients also where the cultural element comes in. So they are craving their cultural food, say why they're going through chemotherapy, for example. Going through chemotherapy is a very, very tough time, very tough. And they crave their own cultural foods, which might be higher in carbohydrates. So it doesn't fit the bill really. But their desire to connect with their roots, and it's comforting. It is really, it's where they draw their strength from to withstand chemotherapy. So in that time, there is leeway to focus on, all right, this is a very limited, defined time period, especially when you're having IV chemotherapy every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and there's a limited time to that, where what is going to help you cope? What is going to also emotionally, spiritually support you through this time period? Because that's very important too at that time. So those are areas we also focus on, even if it doesn't quite fit the macronutrient ratio profile at that point in time. It certainly isn't an area where we are just very regimented about, because it's about embracing food. If we, as you said, if we have an aversion to the food and that doesn't go away, that food, there's a nourishing element that is lacking from that. Even if we force ourselves to eat it, we will not feel satisfied. And we are then using an energy blockage that will impact the way we can actually, digest and assemble those nutrients. So that's a very important part here as well that we got to look at.
Kirstin, you have just shared so much information. We've really taken a deep dive into how supportive nutrition can be as part of that complementary process towards addressing cancer care. And I'm so grateful that there are people like you who are available to share and guide and nurture people who are going through this journey. If people wanted to connect with you, what's the best way for them to find you?
I have a website, which is called kirstinscancercare.com. So it's my first name, K-I-R, not R-I, K-I-R, S-T-I-N. So Kirstin, And then there's an S for Sam, kirstinscancercare.com. That's where you can find me.
That's great. And I'll be sure to put the link down below, as well as a link to your book, which was amazing. I remember reading it when it first came out. Yeah. It's such a good book. So much wonderful information in there. And thank you again for being here. Thank you for the work you do and those you support. It's truly important work.
Thank you. You're very welcome. And thank you for having me here. And I hope that some of the nuggets of information are useful for your listeners and viewers.
Thank you. Thanks so much, folks, for being here. Remember, I'll put all the links down below, and make sure that you click that subscribe button so you'll be notified when we have more great videos to share with you. Take care and have a beautiful rest of your day.